Welcome back, everybody, to the Burnout series. We are going to be talking today about coaching and neuroscience and how they can help us navigate the experiences that we might be having with burnout. And, I think what we've been saying, and certainly conversations I've been having with a series of people, is burnout is showing up in all different guises. And sometimes it can be kind of difficult to know what it is when you're in the middle of it. I think that's been a theme throughout. And so I'm absolutely delighted to have Maureen Hewitt with us today. Maureen is a phenomenal person who has more knowledge about neuroscience than anybody else that I know of, certainly. And Maureen is the CEO of Positive Success Group. And Maureen, you deliver quality training and accreditation for coaches and companies. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Globally, I know you're at the four corners at this stage. And really, it's about enabling leaders bring their people forward in the healthiest way for themselves and the business. I know that's something that you're really keen to make sure people are aware of, because that's so important, particularly in the current climate. And we know this is not your first rodeo, as you say yourself. You've been in the corporate world for a long, long time, but really moved into this space because it was so challenging for you on a personal level from a positive perspective, but also really you love growing people to grow business, I think is the bottom line.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, when people say, what do you do in a nutshell? I go, I grow people to grow business. I love people and I love business. So it seemed like the perfect match.
Fantastic. I'm so delighted you were able to spend a bit of time with us today. So grateful that you were able to be here.
Thanks a million. No, well, I'm always happy to be speaking with you, Niamh, but also on this topic. I mean, this is my passion. So thank you for allowing the opportunity to talk about it.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And so maybe you'll talk to us a little bit around your own personal experience with burnout. And if that hasn't shown up, brilliant. But I know you have had many clients where it show up in different guises. So talk us through what's going on for you in the burnout space.
Yeah, I think the burnout space is something that I have noticed because of the neuroscience and it being a specialist area, I've been able to use it as a lens looking back on my life as well as into the future. And when I use it looking back, I realized I was an observer of people, or, someone who's very nosy. And my observation was always curious around the state people got themselves into. And many years ago, this is many years ago, you'd hear it on our road where you'd hear that woman is taken to the bed, for at least 6 weeks. And we'd all be going, what happened to her? What's happened to Mrs. Whatever? And there was like this secret story of people that would have to take to their beds. And I was like, well, why? What does that mean? And then afterwards they would come back and they'd be back in their lives again because they were burnt out. And just the things that they were doing in their lives had gotten to the point of exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, physical exhaustion. So I often wondered, why do they let themselves get into that state? And then, of course, as I was growing up, I realized, oh, I see now exactly why you find yourself caught in that loop without feeling that there's a way out or knowing there's a way out. So it's always been in us. I think the more observant I've got through the work I do, the easier it is for me to see it's on my radar. And that has certainly helped me personally, not always, but a lot go, see this is you're falling into this cycle yourself. So make sure you get support or do something differently, or at least notice the alerts earlier so you can not just prevent it, but put up supports for if it gets worse or it catches you out. A lot of burnout, even though we know so much about it, Niamh, and I know you know a lot about it, still catches people unawares. It really does. It's like something that they're blindsided. I know so much about this. I hear it. I spot it. So how could it possibly catch up on me? Yeah. And I think if you're human and you're contracted to be alive at the moment, well, then it is naturally swirling around your system. And it's what can we do with knowing about our human systems and how we're connected to other systems that can help us shape it differently so we don't end up in that state for longer than necessary.
Totally, you're so right. And we said that in one of the earlier sessions, it kind of creeps up on you and you're not even aware of it. And certainly for myself, I was well gone out of the corporate world. I was like, that's what was happening. And I would have been talking to people about burnout every day as part of my career. Yeah. And somebody was talking to me during the week and they were talking about there's still maybe a bit of a stigma around admitting some of the things you might be experiencing as part of burnout. You know, people don't want to feel like they're failing or they're not coping or they're suffering exhaustion because somehow they might be perceived as failing or haven't got all their put the blank here, all their shit together,
Yeah.
So maybe talk to me a little bit around, how do you see neuroscience as an opportunity for us to consider that might help people with some of the symptoms that they're experiencing as part of burnout?
I think one of the best things that neuroscience offers is a very high definition self-awareness, as we call it. So it offers us an opportunity to notice signals that we wouldn't normally notice. And so once you're in a position where you notice those signals, then you have a choice. You'll know from our work, one of my favorite quotes is the Viktor Frankl quote about between space and between stimulus and response, there's a space. And that's the space that neuroscience, for us as coaches who coach with neuroscience, are really good at handling. And so what we're handling in that space is, what are the signals that are going off in that human system that they may be aware of and they're afraid to say because there's a stigma, or they're not realizing how it's impacting them or how others are experiencing them, and having the opportunity to go, this is another language that I present myself with. And if I can understand this language, then I can have a conversation to someone else about it. For me, that's a really beautiful offering of an extra human resource that we don't often realize. And some scientists talk about the limbic system. And so there's a limbic language, which is our emotional part of our brain. And it's actually how humans connect through our limbic system. That is our language through how our chemistry goes. Oh, I really like you. So flirting, dating. Oh, the oxytocin is going. That's really nice. But also, oh, you're really stressing me out. Oh, you make me, step back. It's the same system that's picking up that language. So neuroscience offers us a language to have a clearer understanding and awareness about what's going on in us, and how do we bring that to someone else to help support us. Because I think it allows us to step out of the self-care, which is fantastic, and go to the coactive care. I need someone else to sit with me and help me test my thinking, or be honest with myself about, I'm actually much further down the road on exhaustion than what I've been willing to say out loud. So having a space to have that language that's in us shared with someone else who can hold that and go, that's okay, actually, I totally understand where you are, and these are the things you can do about it. So for me, neuroscience is that ability to have an awareness and have language to use with that awareness in play to help ourselves to grow better, be better, stabilize, and manage the states that we're in before they get to burnout. Or what, sometimes people don't talk about it, but there's definitely a variation of this on the continuum, which you've probably come across, which is rust out. And rust out is often not spoken about either, but it is another form of burnout. And it's where
you have to explain rust out. I love this.
You're welcome. So yeah, rust out is another agenda style that we notice, where people are either numbed to the point of they just feel like there's nothing left in them. So they've just rusted out. They've become, they stay in the same place, they do the same thing, they're not being actualized, there's no stimulation, they don't find anything funny, and they're just kind of enclosed in this choice. Or maybe it's a relationship choice, or maybe it's just a discipline that they started and it worked for them then and it doesn't work for them now. So burnout can have many different patterns and ways of showing up. And it can even show up in an activity that looks like it's busy, but it's busy in terms of people jumping jobs. I need a new career, I need a new promotion, I need a new level, I need a bigger team. Because they're actually burnt out in terms of knowing what it is that stimulates them, or what success is for them. Chasing some other person's dream, or they're attached to someone else's idea of success. And so there's many different shades of burnout. And sometimes it actually is not about being exhausted and busy. It's actually just not doing anything. They just haven't made any choices for themselves in a very long time. And they look okay, because they're stable and effectively functioning, but actually they're in the same cycle of energy exhaustion.
Would you say avoidance kind of creeps in there? Is that what we're talking about?
I think it's a fear of change, a fear of changing their state, that if I change one thing, then everything will crumble. And so I just need to keep everything exactly the same because I know that works. I can survive. I think burnout and rust out are very, they're modes of survival, aren't they? But eventually the cost is too great.
For sure. And, we even got to the point on a couple of the previous sessions where we were talking about your body talks to you all of the time. And it's the not listening to the body is when things can become more and more and more compounded, I guess, and can lead to some serious medical challenges as we've seen throughout. So in terms of all the things that you've just been describing with the limbic system and, neuroscience helps us to get to a particular choice and an opportunity then to consider, do we have someone else to have a conversation with and a language now that we can use? What's your view in terms of how we consider neuroscience to help us in this space with all that you've just shared?
I think once you understand yourself first, then it is about that self-awareness, self-care, or just even the acceptance of actually, this is not healthy for me.
I think the acceptance is a big one. The awareness of acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And then for me, it's about who am I going to and how am I going to continue that conversation? Because there's a big difference between the different styles of coaching, right? But one style of coaching is, let's get you to a point of realization and acceptance. And that's great. So you realize it and you accept it. Whew, well done. Now you can look at loads of self-help books and best of luck with that. I want to move past that. I see human systems as having a potential for energy. So a potential for energy spend. And if you integrate it in a clear, clean way, which neuroscience allows us to do, head, heart, and gut, integrated, clear energy, then you've got that really clear, clean, aligned, integrated energy to spend in your life any way you want. So I think that first bit is, if I'm aware and I realize this realistically isn't working well for me, what do you do with that conversation? Where do you go with it? That for me is where coaching comes in and where neuroscience comes in. So I'm very tuned into hearing people say, and you have to be able to, discern between, oh, I'm really busy and I'm really this and I'm really that, between, okay, that's someone who's needs to manage prioritizing themselves as well as their job, to people who have, that manifestation of a health problem, which is adrenal fatigue. They've overspent their cortisol, which is one of our neurochemicals. And you can, if you're awake to it, you can sense that in people over Zoom, over a text and an email. Once you tune into the neuroscience of how humans work, you start to really see this extra language and hear it and understand it. So hearing someone say, oh, I'm really busy. Gosh, I'm too busy to do this, that, and the other. And someone saying, this busyness has me exhausted, where I can't make a choice for myself. You're going, okay, that's different. Having that conversation is different to, oh, I'm really busy and, I like being busy or I don't like being busy. I must change my job. For some of us, it's about changing the state you're in, changing the cost in the neurochemicals in your system. And we have 5 key chemicals that we're considering playing and balancing with. And they impact everything we do. They impact our state of mind. They impact our mindset. They impact how we sleep, how we digest our food. So having that view and understanding and awareness about how those chemicals are playing out, then they allow us to have a conversation with someone else and go, do you know what, this is more stress in my system than I think is healthy for me to have. And it's exhausting me. Just all these emotions are exhausting me. What do I do with them? And it's knowing where and who to go with those conversations. And coaching is a brilliant place to go when you realize it's a safe space, especially coaches who have neuroscience in their set, because they will help you handle the conversation with yourself to go, okay, so first of all, we can reset the chemicals here. if we know what to be saying to ourselves and what frame of reference and integrating our head, our heart and our gut and other stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it allows that reset. And once you feel you're in control of your state again, then you go, okay, so if I can control this state, then I have more potential on how I spend it and how I use it. And it's the ripple effect. And I'm sure you've come across it, you know, through work and personal lives. You meet someone and you can, if you know them, you know exactly, they're in some mood today. There's something, I can sense it. I don't know whether I'll ask about it or not, but it's definitely there.
Yeah.
And it can be a lingering state for days, weeks, months. And you can read this in this other person. And they're still producing results and goods, but you know that there is a cost.
They're not themselves.
They are not.
She hasn't been herself for a few days, or he hasn't been himself for a couple of weeks, or whatever the case.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we go, if you're Irish, you go, no, I'm grand.
Grand. Yeah.
Get another cup of tea, and I probably just need, you know, open the window a bit. No, you probably just need some space and time and a safe space to consider what's going on, because who's looking after you? In Ireland, again, we have this big, you know, badge for being givers, but we are giving our energy and giving our chemistry. Keep giving, you must give. And we're much better at giving than we are at taking. So we will put everybody else first.
Yeah.
And
then
the
adult saying, 100%, you can't give from an empty cup. So it is, as you say, that level of awareness. And I'd love just to go back to the hormones that you were talking about, because we've mentioned a couple of them through the sessions. But I think it'd be a really interesting space for us to just consider, in terms of, you want to mention what the 5 are, and maybe what we could think about doing in that space to help, you know, raise the good ones. And I think they're all good at points in time, but we were even discussing cortisol. Speaking too much cortisol, while necessary on occasions, if it's sustained, you know, in heightened state, it's not good for us. So could you mention the 5 and talk about how the neuroscience comes into play with that?
Yeah, I think the first time that I understood the cost of chemicals in my system when it was, oh my God, it was probably about 10 years ago, maybe, I can't remember, a long time ago anyway, where I was having trouble and I was tired, and I went to this great functional medicine doctor, and he said, yeah, you've got adrenal fatigue. And I was like, yeah, what? And what's that? And he said, yeah, I know by looking at you, but let's do all the tests. And I was like, yeah, I like science, so I'd like all the tests done. Until I saw what the tests were, and I was, oh God, do I have to do that, really? But when they came back and said absolutely adrenal fatigue, then I got really interested in what does that mean? Why would one of my natural organs? And actually it was from your adrenal glands handle adrenaline, but they also handle cortisol. And cortisol is your most extreme fight or flight chemical in your system. And it's brilliant. It's really necessary for us to handle ourselves when something is happening. Everybody's heard is fight and flight and fawn. And they're really important. And even in terms of fight or flight, knowing which element to have in your system, you know, if something does come up, we either need to run away from it and avoid it, or we need to stand and fight it and manage ourselves in it. So even the different nuances in that. But, you know, having a very busy, ambitious career and 3 children and all the things that go with the life I loved to lead, costs your system. You know, being the giver in not your own family, but to your business and to your clients and to all the things, and, you know, always being the one that go to Maureen, she'll help. Yeah, I want to. So realizing that I could still do all these things and the effective functioning piece and have this going on in my system made me realize this is a very high cost for effectively functioning in your life. So what else are the chemicals, and how do I make sure that never happens again? So of course, nutrition and sleep and all those things are really important. But cortisol is a very high cost if it's used, as you said, or we're spending more than we need. Adrenaline, which is the one next to it, really important. I mean, we all know when we've got adrenaline in our system. And adrenaline is like when you put the brakes, when you're going accelerator, and then if there's too much adrenaline, even when the brakes are on, you know, when you have to do something, the adrenaline is still flowing in your system.
Pumping.
And we
Physical
know this,
pumping, isn't it?
you really can. And they talk about adrenaline, and you know, there's those great stories of, if you look in nature to animals that have adrenaline going in their system, and if you have the gazelle that's caught by the lion, you know, the adrenaline goes to the point of, there's absolutely no point, figure it out, you're a goner. And if the lion goes away to get its cubs, the adrenaline is still pumped into the system, and that's where the gazelle starts to move and mooch again and get up again and run away. And but I thought that animal was dead. So adrenaline will keep going, but only to a point where your cortisol goes, this is just you know, lie down and give up business. And this is where we start to get interested in neuroscience, because it tells us that there are chemicals in our system, but that they have a cycle to work out. So cortisol is in your system, and just because, you know, the lion is gone and you're safe at home now, doesn't mean that the chemicals are now finished with. They're still in our system. So we have adrenaline and cortisol, and if we are in a workplace or in a relationship or in a situation or an event where we're stressed, and then we leave it at 5 o'clock and we shut down our laptops, or we, you know, go for a walk, those chemicals are still in our system going, should I be fighting or flight here? Should I be surviving? Our adrenal glands are still paying that toll because we haven't finished working them through our system. We haven't gotten up like the gazelle and shaken it all out and run away. We've just got on with the next task and gone, and then we've tried to sleep. Yeah. And then people wonder, why am I waking up at night? Yeah, because you have all this stuff in your system that hasn't had a chance to naturally work through. So those ones are very high toll. And then we have one of my favorites, dopamine. They're all my favorites because they're all chemicals and they're really useful. So dopamine is a really interesting one. And I call it the shift chemical, because it usually allows a shift between, okay, is this a threat? Or is this a reward? Is this good for me? Should I run towards it? Should I run away from it? But it is that kick of that fix of, oh, this feels nice. And now what are you going to do with it? So dopamine usually happens if there's something introduced into your line of sight, or into your text, or into your iPhone. So dopamine is also a cost. So you can imagine that every time a notification goes off, so every time your WhatsApp or your email or your Slack or TikTok sends you something, and that's why these Apple iPhones, which are great and I love them, you're going, really, it's another notification. It's another kick to our brain to go, wake up, something, you need to make a choice whether you run away or you stay. Is this a good or is it a bad?
Yeah.
And
it's quite addictive, that one, isn't it?
That is one of the most addictive ones. We're always talking about what's the next dopamine hit. And marketing and our lives currently are built around creating dopamine hits, because we love a good dopamine hit.
So dopamine feel amazing for 5 minutes.
So there's that again, there's that flood, and then it goes out of our system. We're thinking, how do I get the next one? I'd like that feeling again, please.
The next hit, yeah.
So we're always looking, and that's why people and our brains have been managing themselves to occupy so much space with the notification, and why great but tricky platforms and social media are so good at giving you something new every 6 seconds, because that's just the right time to keep
you on there.
Yeah, keeps you in there. And then there's the lighter, brighter ones that we're all trying to have more of, which are oxytocin. So oxytocin is the love chemical, they say, but really what it's about, it's that direct connection between limbic system to limbic system. It means I feel safe. This is lovely. There's a potential for trust and love here. So oxytocin is a really lovely one to have. And we found
fundamental for connection. Sorry for interrupting. Fundamental for connection and trust. Yeah.
Trust, without oxytocin, there won't be trust. So it is the give take. Oh, hello, nice to see you. Have you got something? And what is great, and we both are dog owners, so dogs are brilliant, and pets are really brilliant at producing oxytocin in us, and they are the only other one that have dogs that have oxytocin, relays.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So yeah, it's really good. It's one of the best techniques, actually. Something you want to do is watch dog videos, go spend time with your dog, look into your dog's eyes. Yeah, so yeah, I'm addicted to that, I have to say. So we have oxytocin, and then serotonin we also talk about, and a lot of people know that as the happy chemical in our system, and it does allow us feel content and settled and calm and safe. So of course we want more of that. But the lives we lead today and the jobs we take on and the pressures are tending to put us mostly in the default of the adrenaline and the cortisol and the dopamine. And because we're not having a chance, because we're so busy to get up and run this off, once the brakes go on and they come off again, what are we going to do with that energy? We're just getting on with the next task, And so this build-up of cortisol and adrenaline and dopamine and all the emotions that flushes through your system is emotionally exhausting. It's the energy it takes to have those in our system on all the time is burning us out. So the more we get to know about, oh, I can feel that in my system, that's definitely cortisol, that's definitely adrenaline, what's going on? Actually, that's not real at all. That's just me making up a story that I'm going to lose this, or I'm uncertain about that, or I won't know what's going to happen in my future. So you can imagine this time last year where we were, and we were put into this massive uncertainty loop. Everybody, every human in the world, and it was a full engagement of everybody. We were all in it together. We were all high on dopamine, high on adrenaline, and high on cortisol together. And then the uncertainties, the unknowns, the what are we going to lose, the fear of, missing out and not seeing, all that heightened these chemicals in our system more than they've ever been in our generation. And for most people who live on this earth, this has been a sustained spend on top of what was already in our system.
Already there. Yeah.
So I mean, it makes perfect sense to us that burnout is one of the top topics, because we're not finding ways of allowing the adrenaline and the cortisol work its way out naturally. We're holding it, and we're trying to sleep with it, we're trying to eat with it, and we're trying to have relationships with it, and it just doesn't serve us well.
Yeah. Oh my God, you put that so brilliantly, because it does really pull together all of the other topics that we've been discussing, and all of the other topics, if you put some of those steps in place, are going to help increase they're all good, but the ones we need to increase more of, such as the serotonin and the oxytocin, etc. So thank you so much for summing that up brilliantly. And in the interest of time, believe it or not, the time has whizzed by as it usually does. Based on everything that you've said and knowing the fundamental, impact neuroscience and a little bit of knowledge around that can have, and all the hormones and the increase of the good ones, shall we say, that we need to, if you were to leave us with two things that people could consider taking that's going to help them navigate through burnout, or by the very nature of even implement will hopefully prevent burnout, what would be your top two?
I think the first one is the truth. Work from the truth of what's going on in your system. So don't try and hide it or deny it or pretend it. You can't work off burnout. You have to work through it. So you have to see what you are working through. And to do that, it is about pausing. And what I find works really well is having the safe space of having someone else to pause with. I think there's only so many baths and candles and walks we can do on our own. And they're great and they're really helpful. But I'm a firm believer in coactivity. So it's the interpersonal neurochemistry that happens between one human and another. And having another human sit with you and understand and listen to your truth and hold that truth, so you can go, oh, actually, that is me. And that's a really great starting point. And then, options can go from there. Actions can happen from there. But the first action is to operate from a place of your truth. And if you're curious about, am I really, is this? Likely you are. Asking the question is probably the first signal of, there's something to work through, not work out. I'm tired of you. Can you work this out? You can't solve this. You can't. It is like that book, that children, one of our favorite kids books that I used to love. You're going on a bear hunt. There's lots of things to jump over and go through, and going with someone else definitely helps. Having a trusted advisor to sit in the space, I think definitely helps. The other piece I think is the second piece for me, and I know I'm very conscious that you had such great speakers on before. I actually think and I would be leaning into something they say, I think what we put into our system to help with that truth helps a lot. So we know our gut bacteria is a direct transmitter for those chemicals. If your gut bacteria, if what you're putting into your system stops those chemicals from working, or stops them being transmitted or read, it stops it is like, cutting the channel, cutting the cable for that language to be heard and transmitted. So definitely, if I was going to start with one thing in terms of managing my system, it would be manage your gut system first. It is the translator and the originator of all those chemicals. So it doesn't matter. People say, oh, I'll add some supplements in, or I'll, eat healthy. Whatever's in that space is the clarity, allows for the clarity of those chemicals to be noticed in you. So have a space with someone else, have a trusted advisor who understands and will hold you in a very safe space while you figure this out. And also make sure that the main connector of these chemicals and originator for them is a clear bed for them to work from and work with. So eat to serve your system well, and drink to serve your system well.
Yeah, love it. Oh my God, that is amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Maureen, it's really just pulled everything together, I think, certainly in my brain. Hopefully whoever's listening will feel the same if they've been watching the series. It really makes total sense, and couldn't have said it better myself. Brilliant 2 points to walk away with.